Hey friends, so in this video, we're going to look at why saving $10,000 is one of the most critical milestones in your wealth building journey and what it says about you and the different things that you can learn along the way. And I'm going to share insights that I didn't realize at the time when I hit my first 10K that I wish I could have went back and shared with myself to avoid hijacking my wealth building journey. And they are things that you can implement today to help transform your own money situation so that you can take advantage of these milestones and help push past plateaus. So, for this video, I built a free little checklist that you can get on my website or just follow along on the video. But I wanted to break down these two muscle groups of tactics and mindsets that I, looking back, realized were the most important things that I could have either been focused on at this 10K milestone, or I did well, or things that hijacked me. Let's check off these first three. First, investments, improving your cash flow, and money earning for you, and talk about what happens at $10,000 in these tactics. You can start to more tangibly see your money earning for you. And this gets into a mindset shift where instead of you working for your money, you're starting to see more of your money more actively working and growing for you. And whether you're invested at $100, $1,000, any amount, it's still growing. But for me, the mental appreciation of seeing money grow really starts to change once you hit that five-figure amount. And I have a video on compound interest, but let's say you're an aggressive saver and you're planning to use this $10,000 to kind of be your nest egg that you're growing over the next 30 years. Well, that $10,000 using a average 7% interest rate over 30 years would grow to almost $80,000 all on its own. On the flip side, as you're building wealth for the first time and you're hitting this first milestone, it can also start to feel real where you actually see real loss. So if you're invested in the stock market and you have your first real big dip, let's say 5% or a 10% drop, well, you've seen $1,000 drop out of your $10,000 milestone, and you might start to feel the emotional tension of risk and fearing loss, but still investing anyways, and can kind of continuing to push on your vision. Now, the other critical part is that you're starting to learn more about cash flow. If you ask most people how much money they spend on any given month or how much money they make in a year, it's actually pretty hard for people to tell you because they have a general idea of their expenses and you're kind of just operating on a hope that by the end of the month you have enough money to cover your bills and hopefully you're not going into too much debt. Well, when you're operating more consciously and focused on money, you have a plan and you're learning how your cash flow works. You're starting to see expenses that you can start predicting and saving for so that they don't become surprises, or you're learning how to cut back in maybe areas that don't mean a lot to you, and you're learning how to start prioritizing. You're starting to prove to yourself that you can manage cash flow and you can start to make positive change with your money. Now, here's what I wish I would have done that I didn't do is I was still really focused just on moving my money from my checking to my savings account. I was not focused on how much interest was I earning on my cash, and I really wasn't focused on learning really how to invest because at the time I was thinking too small. I wasn't thinking about the fact that, oh, I can actually start investing with $100 and setting a long-term vision. And so my hope for you is that you're conscious of the fact that you can be learning these muscles, learning how to do your investments, learning about your cash flow, making money earn for you versus you always having to earn for it. Okay, so let's hit on these other two, your emergency coverage and moving away from paycheck to paycheck. So, this 10K can be a little subtle because you might not appreciate this, but when you hit $10,000, you've pretty much been able to cover for any type of emergency that is going to happen into you in any given moment. You have enough money to cover you in an emergency that it allows you to make better decisions because you have that cash buffer. And that feeds into the next part, moving away from this paycheck to paycheck mentality where you're always stuck at the end of the month hoping that your next paycheck is going to cover your bills. And by the time you've hit this 10K milestone, you've been able to manage cash flow like we talked about. And you're starting to move away from paycheck to paycheck living, and you're starting to move into this place where you have more space. And the space that I'm talking about is both physical and emotional. The physical space to say, if I lost my job tomorrow, I have a little bit of extra time that I have time now to be able to find maybe a job, or I could take a little bit of a break if I needed to. The mental space is starting to move away from this sense of lack where you never have enough money because you're not able to save. Well, at the 10K mark, you've clearly proven to yourself that you are able to save. Now, this next one I added midway because I realized I wanted to talk about it and I didn't add it in here. So, I want to talk about optimized purchasing because this is so critical. When you start to hit the 10K milestone or even higher, you can start to be more strategic about how you decide to spend money. So, there's something called the poverty tax of spending. So, if you don't have a lot of money, for instance, you have a Chase checking account, you don't keep a minimum balance, so they're charging you a fee. Or you overdraft your account, now they're charging you a fee. You might not have enough money to be able to buy a nicer pair of shoes. And so you have to buy a cheap pair of shoes and they wear down at 5 times the rate of maybe just a decent pair of shoes. You're ending up paying more for everything. And so when you have $10,000 and you need to make a purchase, you can be strategic and actually make one that is actually cheaper, ironically, even if you're paying a little bit more for it up front. This gets into all sorts of tactics like buy now, pay later, which is a hot topic, which I want to talk about in the future, or buying something on debt. So putting it on a credit card or a loan. Everything that's financed or having to buy cheaper because you can't afford something a little bit better and higher quality. These all have costs to them. And when you hit 10K, you can be really strategic and say, okay, I can afford, $100 pair of shoes. I don't have to buy a $20 pair of shoes that is going to break down in a month. And this is frustrating and a little ironic. And it's a way that kind of the rich get richer because you end up not having to pay as much money for things that people that aren't able to save and aren't able to hit these milestones end up paying more for. All right. And then the last two that I want to hit on the tactic side, consistent savings and systems and automation. What you've proven is that you can consistently save. You've been able to prove to yourself that you can be consistent. And more importantly than that, you start to set up systems and automation that go into making managing money even easier. These are all great tactics, but at the core is this mindset that we're starting to shift. And that, for me, has been the most transformational part of my money journey. And there are things that I wish I would have realized from a mindset perspective that was happening to me as I was taking action. And then other things that I didn't realize that hijacked me and delayed me from being able to get from the 10K milestone to the 50 or the 100. Okay. And that is this first one. Don't let people make you feel small. And it's so critical for you to understand. So, we live in a culture that is so status driven. So, you have billionaires and TV shows, Instagram and social media pumping you with views of people living these perfect lives and all of this money and marketing to get people to spend more money. And it's really all wrapped up in people's ego and status and really companies encouraging you to separate yourself from your money by spending it. It can be really easy for other people to make you feel small. For me, this was a huge mindset shift is learning to appreciate every single dollar that you have. And when you hit this 10K milestone, I think you'll realize this. You'll realize that money is hard. It's hard to earn a dollar. And so for me, I started to actually respect money more because I wasn't letting it just fall through my fingers. And I realized that it was a lot more difficult for me to actually hold on to it and put money towards my own vision. And it can be really easy to feel small because what you don't see around you. So if you look around at people, if you're in a coffee shop or something, you see people with nice cars, nice clothes, maybe a nice house, like all this stuff. What you don't see on the other end, and there's this Homer meme that I love where, he's like showing himself off on the front, but he's like clipping all his fat behind him. It's kind of like people with money is, they try to show off like, look, I have all this stuff. But what you don't see on the other side is massive amounts of debt or job dependence or, basically like if anything breaks at any moment, it all just kind of comes crashing down. So it's really easy to make yourself feel small as you hit these milestones because you're not at maybe the end milestone that you want to be. What I would really reframe in this, and I wish I would have done this much earlier, is look at like this $10,000 as the first brick in a big wall that you're building. You're creating the foundation for this vision that you have for your money. And you've already hit this point where you have enough money that you can solve any emergency. You're getting away from paycheck to paycheck living. You're getting better with investing. Your money's starting to grow on its own. You can have, you're starting to be able to learn that, through systems and automation, money is actually not that complicated. You don't have to be a math person to be able to do this. Really be proud of the fact that you hit this milestone and realize that most people are probably jealous because they haven't been able to save $10,000 on their own. Okay, so this next mindset shift, celebrate and reframe. This one is actually reframing and realizing that you have massive growth if you've hit this $10,000 mark. So let's say you move from $1,000 to $10,000, you have actually 10x'd your money. Even if you have $10 and you move to $100, you've 10x'd your money. When you're just starting out and you're working with these smaller amounts and you make those big changes, you go from 10 to $100, or if you work hourly, you go from $15 to $16 an hour. You have to look at the amount of change that you've made. And at these levels, you're making massive progress anytime you make even small changes. Okay, so we're going to talk about these two together, changing your money relationship and changing your self-talk. Instead of seeing money as this, this bad guy that you have a bad relationship with, start to see money as your friend, because now, money is here in an emergency. Money's helping you move from paycheck to paycheck living to having more space and flexibility in your life. So your relationship and how you think about money and how you start to prioritize it in your life starts to change. Your self-talk with money can also change. Instead of I'm really bad with money, it can be I'm actually good with money. I'm proving to myself that every single day when I manage my expenses and I prioritize spending money on the things that are most important to me, or I'm prioritizing my future vision by investing and saving money, and it's working better for me. And hopefully at $10,000 you're starting to move that self-talk more positively. And it goes back to not letting people make you feel small. You don't have to be really loud about your milestones. No, this can be something that's really personal, and it means something to you. Look at, breaking generational curses. So if you grew up in poverty, or maybe people around you were not good with money, you're breaking out. You might be the first person in your family to be able to do certain things that maybe only other people in your family could dream of, and you're working towards that. So look at how you're relating to money and look at your self-talk. And I know this might sound a little fluffy. I got a critical comment in one of my videos like, so, oh, you're just going to talk about thinking about money and it's just going to be there. We have to focus on the tactics. We got to work. We got to focus on how do we make more money. We have to focus on how do we spend less. And you're getting really tactical. But at the root of all of that and what's guiding your behavior are these key ideas that are changing your identity. And as you change your identity, it makes taking action easier. An example I want to give with this, with identity, is you can see that people have different relationships with food. Food is a really good analogy to money. So if you're trying to kind of understand how to think about money as a tool, I would think about money as food. And here's what I mean. We all relate to food in different ways. You'll see a bodybuilder, and they might think about food as just like it's a fuel for my body and for this goal that I have, or an athlete. And other people, they have negative relationships with food. I've been guilty of this. I'm having a stressful day and I'm gonna, eat 10,000 calories to make myself feel better. It's the same thing as like I'm gonna go on a shopping spree to make myself feel better and spend all of my money and go into debt. It's kind of the same thing. You start building emotional attachments with money in good or bad ways. The point is that as you start to change your self-talk with money, you can start to reposition money towards more positive things. And the goal for this is that making good decisions with money, just like we want to make good decisions with food, comes with less friction in your brain. So if you've ever tried to start dieting when you've never dieted before, and you start trying to restrict yourself, and it's like, oh, I can't have ice cream now. You know how painful that is because you're burning all of this willpower towards like I really want this and I'm not letting myself have it, and now I'm not happy. So the way to kind of get around that is to start repositioning your focus. So instead of I really want ice cream and I can't have it, it's like, hey, I want to feel healthier and that's more important to me. So as soon as you can kind of start moving your self-talk to focusing money on what's actually important for it, that big vision that you have, the big things that you want to do in your life, and then that makes making hard decisions with money easier. Now, I didn't know any of that when I saved my first $10,000. I wish that I would have had that insight back then. So hopefully you can use it. But for me, when I first saved my first 10K, it was like, oh man, this is really hard. I'm not able to do any of the things that I want to do. And it was just kind of a grind. My goal for you is to not have that grind mentality because you need to be able to balance. You need to be able to enjoy the moment. You need to be able to spend well and kind of enjoy your life versus just being so restricted that you burn out and then you have some relapse into, spending a bunch of money. Okay, so then this goes into the next point, your vision, this up and out vision. So a lot of people in life, their whole life they look down and just kind of at their feet and they're not really looking up and around them at the big strategy that they might want in their life and the dream that they have. Now, to be fair, everybody dreams, but if you talk to a lot of people, they're really focused on, look, man, I just want to party on Friday, or I'm focused on what I want to do this month. They don't have this grander view of life and looking at how money can help them. And so when you start saving these large amounts of money and you hit this five figures and you're starting to show yourself that yes, I can actually, I can build wealth and I can keep this going, and then you're starting to learn how to improve that, and you're getting really excited about how you can do more. Your vision, this up and out vision that you have of like what is the grand vision for my life, that really starts to come to the forefront and it starts to feel more real. I think that's the biggest thing at this point is things start to feel real. You're proving to yourself that you can do it. And so it's not a question of, will I ever get there? It's a question of, can I stay consistent to be able to hit my next milestone? And so the better you can have that up and out vision that's really clear about money as a tool and what you want it to do for you, the more powerful making good money decisions becomes. And the easier it becomes to say no to the things that tempt you off the path that you're on, that are not building wealth for you, but actually building wealth for someone else's dream. And what do I mean by that? So let me check off these last two together. What you're learning is one, how to prioritize spending. I'm going to prioritize the things that I really enjoy. And so this gets back into the tactic of cash flow. We're really trying to look at, we have limited amounts of resources. How do I balance the short-term immediate things that I want to enjoy with my long-term goals, and getting that fine balance, which this is the first milestone. This is a challenge at every single milestone you're going to hit. And I want to talk about that in this last one. Don't get hijacked. So, as soon as I hit $10,000, here's what goes through my mind as someone that hasn't learned really how to have this money mastery. I start thinking, man, I could go out and I could buy a new MacBook Pro at the Apple store for $4,000 and I would still have $6,000 left. Or there's this really cool car and I could just put down $10,000 on a down payment. So the don't get hijacked call out is just because you hit 10K, you have to be able to focus on what's my next milestone. And this is a plateau moment. And earlier I said you're building the foundation for this wall where this is your first $10,000 brick. You're never going to not be tempted to spend. And actually, it gets more tempting and the stakes get bigger as you earn more money and you save more money. So, whether you have $10,000, $100,000, $500,000, $1 million, even more, you're always going to be tempted to make bigger and bigger purchases. And so at 10K, really reflect on this. Realize that you're building this muscle right now to say no to things that are going to deplete your milestones. Try to continue this upward trajectory where you're building towards a vision. Yes, spend some of the money. In fact, if you hit a 10K milestone, my recommendation would be take $100 of it or $200 of it and have a nice meal or celebrate in whatever way means the most to you. But then kind of get back up on the horse and keep moving up. So, those are the things that I would focus on at $10,000 and why it's such a critical milestone and why a lot changes if you're focused in the right areas. I'll have the checklist that I walked through in this video available for you for free. So if you'd like to look at where are you on each of these and make any notes to yourself, feel free. Wherever you are in your money journey, I'd love to hear your comments and your perspective as you hit these different milestones. I always love all of the really kind interactions on the channel. So if you have any questions or comments or things that I can help answer, please feel free to leave them in the comments. Always a like or subscribe helps others find the channel as a relatively new channel. If you're enjoying the mindset focus of this milestone, then you might want to check out the first video I ever released. It's a little long because I was still learning how to do YouTube, which I still am, but there's a lot of value there. And it's one of my favorite videos I actually ever created. So hopefully it's helpful for you in your money journey. And I wish you all the best.